Florida is pushing Don't Say Gay legislation, even limiting speech about the bill. Watch this.
A nurse practitioner from Miami, a recent adjunct at Miami-Dade College, and a captain in the Florida National Guard, and I'm here because I love our state. Representative Avila said that we should focus on what individuals face in life, not the groups they belong to. To that, I say that some individuals face life differently because of the groups they belong to. We need to be honest about this. I remember learning about the brave Cuban exiles who lost their lives at the Bay of Pigs. I saw my neighbors in their faces. I remember learning about the Japanese American families who were ripped from their homes during World War II because they looked like the enemy. I saw myself in those faces. I remember learning about Ruby Bridges, who needed to be protected by armed guards so that her school could be desegregated, and I saw my best friend in her face. I remember learning about women being given the right to vote. I saw my mother, and I learned that Don't Ask, Don't Tell had been repealed so that I could serve my country openly. I was one of those faces. Our faces tell a story, and our lives tell a story. Lines 64 to 67 specifically prevent talking honestly about how an individual's privilege or oppression may be determined by his race or her race, color, sex, or national origin. I was born less than 30 miles from North Korea. When Fidel Castro died, I watched the Kim regime mourn his death. For kids that lived under Castro or Kim, learning honestly about history is and was impossible. Representatives, please make learning honestly about history a priority. Let our teachers do their jobs, let our kids hear these unvarnished stories and see our faces, see themselves in each other, and build empathy so that we can all learn from our history and not repeat the mistakes of the past. Please vote no. Thank you.
Well, yesterday, the Florida Senate Education Committee held a hearing on the controversial Don't Say Gay bill. So many people appeared to speak out against the bill that most speakers only had just 30 seconds to say their entire piece. The bill is sponsored by Senator Dennis Baxley. Again, Senator Dennis Baxley. And during the hearing, he was even questioned by two of his fellow Republicans about the severity and broad-reaching scope of this bill. At the end of the hearing, however, the committee voted on the bill 6-3 along party lines to push it out of committee.
Well, I think this just shows that this particular bill, much like the banning trans kids from school sports last year, is a fait accompli at this point. How do we affect change? We vote this November to try and just stem the tide and then start working to take back the legislature, take back the governor's mansion, and take back the Supreme Court, which of course will take a long, long time.
Well, I just think, this story of limiting speech in school and learning about history, it mirrors obviously the topic about critical race theory with the LGBTQ plus experience and not being able to share that in school and erasing those stories is so detrimental to not only LGBTQ plus families or children, but also to the world in general of telling those stories. I actually was at an event over the weekend for the Trayvon Martin Foundation, and they were talking about critical race theory and not telling these stories, and how the stories that have been told are the reason why we're at the place we are today. Right. And that at one point they had to tell those stories just in their families and in their household because it wasn't taught in schools, and it took over time for that stories to be told in truth in schools, and that's how we've learned about the experience of slavery and all these other things. So this is just taking, unfortunately in Florida, taking us back 50 years again.
And Baxley is an insensitive and ill-informed bigot. Fight the real enemy.
Props.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, I'm thinking that one of the things that makes people more comfortable and understand is actually talking about it and listening to things, and it makes all of us more tolerant and open to differences. That's exactly what they are trying to step away from.
Well, Republicans have no tolerance for tolerance.
That's right. Yeah. Tolerance. That's right. It's interesting to me that a bill is introduced in Florida to basically say you can't speak on a subject. Remember, the ramifications are perhaps not the primary school nature of the bill, but the broadness of being able to put your foot in the door and then reinterpret it over time. That's the danger, the super danger here, leading to banning GSAs, leading even to preventing discussing mental health in schools and suicide prevention of LGBTQ youth. This is a devastating bill. And I think an indication of the proof of how zealot and how much zealotry is going on here, is that not only do we not want students to speak in school, we don't even want you to voice any opposition to it, so we'll limit even the ability to talk about the bill itself.
I've also been shocked that corporate America hasn't stepped up and said, why are we going to want our businesses to run in a state that's not going to allow free speech essentially in schools and teaching children about actual history? With the trans bill, in North Carolina, we had all these corporations coming out saying we're going to boycott North Carolina. I haven't seen that start as in fervor yet, but I hope it does. I hope that corporations out there are seeing what's happening here in Florida and step up and say, we don't want this happening in
I'm
this
curious,
state.
in following up that observation about business, let's reduce it 10,000 feet. Do you think, Jeff, that our own community, LGBTQ community, is talking enough publicly in our local communities about this bill and why it must be stopped?
I don't. I think that people are actually falling on deaf ears in some ways, because it feels to me like we're too comfortable. And this is just one step. This is a slippery slope of events that can occur in the state, just like repealing abortion or all of these things. They take little steps over time to take away our civil rights.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ